guy to fill in.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've been on the road.
Yeah.
I was in my civvies. I mean, as you know, Eric had a
So you can
circumstance.
watch the kids.
So we're going to get.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
to go in,
Let me know.
or they
I'm
could
ready.
just do daycare
Take your
here.
time. Do you need a,
If I get my files
Would be
here.
cheaper probably.
You want an
than
agenda?
attending.
No, that'd be great. Thanks, Bill. I know we got the one
And then
continuance.
just
Take
go
your time,
down
I'm not
to
ready
work
either.
for the 3 days or 2 days.
The contentious case is off, so you
I
got lucky.
And more
Well, yeah,
cost
Eric,
effective,
Actually, that was Eric.
because I'm sure that little apartment cost,
That was the exact line.
Because we would have been here until 11.
right?
that wouldn't have been good.
Yeah.
That would not have been good.
I enjoyed your guys' company so much. So I was fine with it.
Which one is off?
The last one, 251 East Church.
Oh, so we only have 3 hearings?
That's correct.
Oh,
Yeah, I anticipated that last one to take some significant time, so I put 3 others, just 3 others that
Well,
were
that's great.
pretty straightforward cases in front.
Oh, yeah, then you've done doubly good tonight. Yeah. Jeannie, let me know when you're ready.
Right, just give me 1 second.
Sure. Yeah, don't rush. I would mention to anyone here, we do have sign-up sheets for each of the individual hearings. We will not be hearing that of the appeal of 251 East Church tonight. That appeal has been continued. But if you would like correspondence going forward on anything that pertains to the specific hearing tonight, I would encourage you to sign on the sheets on this table on my left.
Okay, Bill, I'm ready whenever you are.
Thank you, ma'am. Welcome to the special meeting of the Bethlehem Zoning Hearing Board. My name is Bill Fitzpatrick, and I'll serve as chair for tonight's hearings. Other members of the board tonight, from my left, are Jessica Lee, Mr. Terry Novotny. To my immediate right is Attorney Steve Boel, who will serve as board solicitor and provide legal advice to the board. To his immediate right is Craig Pfeiffer, who is the zoning officer for the city of Bethlehem. And at the far end of the table is Jean Genova, who will serve as court stenographer for tonight's hearings. As I had mentioned earlier, there will only be 3 hearings tonight. The appeal of 251 East Church Street has been continued, and I'm not sure if we'll be able to advise a specific date for at which time that will be heard. The procedure will be pretty simple, is that the appellant will come to the table to my immediate right. Our court stenographer, Jean Genova, will swear in probably everyone, since we have a fairly small attendance tonight. Just take the chance we only have to do that once. Because I would remind you that any questions or testimony that you deliver tonight will be treated as a formal part of the proceedings, and it will be sworn testimony. I will afford members of the audience an opportunity to question, and at an appropriate time to offer comments or testimony, and I'll walk you through that. It's probably the easiest way to do it. The only thing I would ask is that members of the audience avoid making asking repetitive questions or making repetitive testimony. And then finally, anyone aggrieved by the decision the board makes tonight may appeal to either Lehigh or Northampton County Court within 30 days following the issuance of the written decision of the Zoning Hearing Board. And prior to actually starting hearings tonight, I do have an administrative matter to put on the record, in that on April 5th, 2002, 2 appointments were made to the Bethlehem Zoning Hearing Board. The first being Donald C. Flad, who has been appointed as a permanent member. Mr. Flad is not seated this evening. And secondly, Ms. Mary Frances Stone, who has been reappointed as an alternate member to the Zoning Hearing Board. She is also not present this evening. I would ask you to also take note that the board tonight is a board of 3 members, which is a duly constituted quorum. We would typically try to seat as many as 5, but 3 allows us to proceed. So if there's any issues with any of the appellants, we'd like to hear that from you at the appropriate time. Having said that, our first hearing is that of 743 to 745 Center Street, and the appeal of Alex Piro. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Perfect.
Mr. Piro, would you stand to be sworn in? In fact, why don't we swear in everybody at one time who will be testifying even on the subsequent hearings? Even if you think you might be speaking, it's easiest to swear you in now.
Raise your right hands, please. Do swear by mighty God, the searcher of all hearts, that the testimony that you shall give in this proceeding should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And as you shall answer to God at the last great day, do you so swear?
I do.
Yes.
You may be seated.
Thank you. Mr. Piper, can you give us the facts of the case?
Sure. This property is located at 743-745 Center Street. This is the appeal of Alexander Piro on behalf of 743 Center Street LLC to convert the commercial unit, commonly known as 745 Center Street, into a dwelling, which requires a variance to waive the requirement of a commercial use on the front street level and where fronting on an arterial. Dimensional variances for minimum tract size, 9,000 square feet required, 4,958 square feet existing. To reduce the lot area per dwelling, 2,500 square feet required, 708 square feet proposed, or one dwelling permitted, 6 dwellings existing, and a 7th dwelling proposed. And for minimum lot width, 90 feet required, 67 feet existing, and a variance to eliminate the minimum off-street parking requirement, 2 spaces required, none existing, none proposed. This record lot measures 67 feet by 74 feet and is located in the CL Limited Commercial Zoning District.
Thank you. Mr. Piro, can you tell us when the property was posted
Sure. It
with
was
the
a week
yellow
ago.
placard?
Yeah, a week ago. I believe it was April 6th.
Thank you. Attorney Boyle, did you have anything to put on the record prior to starting?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, sir.
Do you prefer that I stand or sit or?
Yeah, just talk into the microphone,
Okay.
please. Make
All right,
yourself
perfect.
comfortable.
Thank you.
Sure.
Honorable members of the board and panel, thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. My name is Alex Piro, and I represent the owner of 743, 745 Center Street. So at 745 Center Street, which is where the commercial unit is, I'm seeking a change of use from commercial to residential. As Craig had mentioned, I respectfully submit that this be approved for the following 4 reasons. First, the conversion will reduce parking needs. Second, the 400 square foot unit has more use as a residential unit in what is predominantly a residential area. Third, I'm seeking to renovate the unit into something that both I and the community can be proud of. And fourth, the existing use has been met with virtually no demand and is therefore a hardship. So first, regarding the reduction in parking needs, per Article 1319 of the Bethlehem zoning ordinance, the typical commercial unit is defined as general business, commercial, and personal service establishments. They require 1 parking space per 150 square feet of area accessible to customers, or 2 parking spaces for each employee, whichever is greater. Since the subject space is 400 square feet, that would imply 2.67 parking spaces would be needed. That said, as Craig had mentioned, at a minimum, there would be 2 parking spaces that are needed if you have 1 employee. So under that assumption, or I should say, in terms of a multifamily dwelling, under that same article, 1319, turns out that multifamily dwellings only require 1.75 spaces. So the conversion from a commercial to a residential use will actually reduce the need from 2 spaces to 1.75 per the ordinance. Regarding number 2, the 400 square foot unit has what I think is more use in the area as residential and appeal as residential. After receiving a right to know request several months ago, my understanding through both an April 2000 meeting, zoning hearing, I should say, and a July 2017 zoning hearing is that this commercial space has been reduced in size twice. Even through both of those meetings, the same seller, Manuel Cerquera, had mentioned even before the reductions that he had struggled to lease the commercial space even when it was larger. Now we've got a 400 square foot unit that has been vacant for 5 years. I've spoken to local owners of stores such as Dunkin' Donuts who say to even have a shot of running a successful business or to even open it per franchise standards, you need over 800 square feet of commercial space. This is 400 square feet of commercial space, drastically reducing the size and the tenant pool that would be interested in taking it. On the other hand, a 400 square foot space for a studio is a reasonable size. Just down the street, I own one studio that is less than 400 square feet at 607 Center Street. After putting in minor upgrades and putting it on the market in December 2021, after just 2 days, I had 90 inquiries and 19 unsolicited applications. That's without me even seeking the applications. They just sent them my way. Again, this speaks to, as you know, the high demand for multifamily or housing in general in the area and the need for a unit that is even 400 square feet. Third, the renovation. I plan to renovate the unit with about $15,000 worth of improvements to make it an attractive home. If you don't mind, if I approach to hand out just a few
Please.
pictures.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Mark this collectively as A1.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's what I was going to say.
Thanks.
Bill, I don't know if you heard that.
Collectively as they want. Yeah,
Yep.
As long as that's okay with it, it's fine with me.
All right. So this is, again, just talking about some of the renovations, some of the examples. So if you look at Exhibit A, I think this is a good one to point to because this is actually in the same building. What you'll see in Exhibit A is 743 Center Street, Unit 4, where we completed the renovation about a month ago. When it started, there was a rug that was smelling of cigarettes, cat urine, dirty walls. The interior itself was extremely dated, having not been improved for decades. We renovated with approximately $13,000, and what you see in front of you in Exhibit A is the change from the kitchen, from the hallway, and from the bedroom. Moving on from there, I also am doing one right now in Allentown, and at that one, which I hope to have complete, if not the end of this week, then the start of next. A little bit of a deeper renovation, even a little bit more of a mess. That one, we're putting in about $16,000, and we're just starting to put the final touches on it. And you'll see that in Exhibit B. And again, I'm proud of these. And what I'm hoping is that if given the opportunity, I'll be putting in this kind of a finish into this commercial unit, something that I would be proud of, and hopefully the community would be proud of as well. And fourth, and finally, the commercial use, at least at this specific unit and location, has a little demand. Per the City of Bethlehem official zoning web app, which I believe in the initial packet, not the one I just handed out, but before that I had sent out, there was a photo of a map, yellow map with some pink in it as well. Let me know if you guys can see that. Might be in the photos themselves. Yes, perfect. Yeah, so this is just going on the website and seeing the official zoning web app. What you'll see is the pink is actually commercial use and the yellow is high density residential. And all that I'm trying to show here is that if you follow Union Boulevard from west to east, you'll end up at Center Street, and that's where this final commercial unit is, 745 Center Street. There, the entire rest of the area, if you go north on Center, south on Center, east on Union, it's entirely high-density residential. And even if you go to the north on Union Boulevard, it's residential. So what we've got is a predominantly residential neighborhood with kind of the end of a peninsula here being this commercial unit. You could even walk the neighborhood. You can see that it's all housing, homes, rentals. What's more is that there's very limited parking when you just walk down the street. This is partly due to the fact that all these residences pay $20 with the Bethlehem Parking Authority. They get the residential permit and they can park their car on the side of the road and not have to move it all day. That's very difficult to deal with when you're a commercial unit there. And that was emphasized by Manuel Cerquera in his testimony and hearings over the course of the years. He had struggled to get a tenant, but even when he did, they struggled to succeed because of the limited parking. Again, I think that that issue in this specific location continues because it's engulfed by residential. So again, I would just mention, because this is residential neighborhood, because of the small layout of the space, because of the limited parking, there's little demand for this space, and that creates the hardship. This is echoed by the 5 years of vacancy, as mentioned. And even the sales broker notified me after the purchase that they sold the property after seeking a tenant for a full year and just decided to move forward and sell it vacant. Furthermore, she had stated that the offers on the building were somewhat limited due to the vacant commercial space. I can testify to it myself. When I went to get a lender, I could not find one that would give me credit for this commercial space because it had been vacant for 5 years. and because they were basically saying that, all right, we're not going to attribute any upside here, at least for now. So again, due to the long-term vacancy. Without reasonable financing, this devalues both the unit and the property as a whole. And above all, I certainly don't want a unit sitting vacant. It's neither good for me nor the community. So with that, I thank you again for your time, and I look forward to the decision.
Questions from members of the board? Ms. Lee?
I have none right now.
Mr. Novotny?
Yes, it says that currently there are 6 units in the
Si-
building.
Yes, 6 residential units are in actually 743, and then 745 is the only unit which is commercial.
Okay, so is there anything above 745
Uh,
residential type or?
yes. I would say that unit 2 within 743 is above 745.
Extends over.
That's right, exactly.
It's the only question I have.
Is 745 actually a corner?
Yes,
It is.
yes.
Would you know that it was it given the designation of 745 simply because there was a commercial use or whatever?
I did not know that.
You don't? Okay. And are you the owner of the property?
Yes, sir.
You are, okay. That is zone parking, I believe I heard you testify.
Yes, exactly. I think it's District F, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, it is that, this is on the corner of Center and Union Boulevard?
Correct.
Is Union Boulevard zoned as well? Do you know,
I
do you
believe
know
it's
around the
E.
corner?
I believe it's E, if I'm not
It is-
mistaken.
it
right
is.
there.
Okay. I have no other questions, Attorney Boyle. Did you have anything for the record?
No, sir.
Mr. Pfeiffer?
Just one. Good evening, Mr. Pirro. Do you propose any exterior alterations to the building?
No.
You'll maintain the storefront as is?
Yes.
Okay, I have no other questions.
Go ahead, Ms. Lee.
Currently, where do the other tenants park?
Just on the
Do
side
they
of the
use
road.
permit as well?
Yes.
Or
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I see them parked in the front of the building all the time.
in the front and on Union Boulevard?
Both, correct.
And there's enough space for all those units?
Yes, I would say, yeah.
Anything else, Jessica?
No, that's all.
Yeah.
all I have.
Questions from members of the audience? Seeing none, I would open the floor for any members of the audience to offer a comment or testimony. If so, please come to the microphone, identify yourself. Seeing no one, Mr. Pirro, did you have any final comments to make to the board?
No, sir. The only question I had, and maybe this is a building department question, if there was a tenant that wanted to put frontage right outside of the door, would that be restricted? Would I be able to come back to discuss that, or how does that?
I'm sorry, could you ask me that question?
Yeah,
please?
it goes back to your question, Craig, because my question is, if we wanted to add basically a vestibule within the exterior facade itself, could we do that so that they would have a place to put the package, or would that be restricted?
So what you would do is if the board is willing to consider the request, they can make that a condition that the applicant works with planning staff on any exterior modifications.
Correct.
And being in the CL district, there is design guidelines, so we can go over those at the time, but
Great.
there are ways to make that vestibule work for you.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, but again, I would like to clarify, the CL applies only to the corner property as opposed to the remainder of the neighborhood. Mr. Pirro, do you know?
It applies to everything going from Center Street west. I believe that CL designation continues west along.
Let me
Union.
talk about the 700 block of Center Street in
Okay.
which your property is located. Is every other property that is not a corner property zone residential?
Correct.
Okay, so just the corners are just.
Correct.
Let me
Yeah,
clarify
please.
that. Mr. Pirro provided us with a zoning map,
Yeah.
and anything that you see colored in the pink color
Yeah.
is all the CL district.
Yeah.
So it's more than just his corner property. It projects westwardly down Union.
Again, I was dealing more with the north-south on Center Street.
And you're correct. It's all residential.
Thank you for that clarification. Any last bites at the apple? Anyway?
Yeah, I'm looking at the photo, 745 down here,
Yes.
because you said you're going to keep the windows.
Yeah, I can certainly keep the windows. All I was thinking of doing was just creating a long curtain bar that covers that up.
Well, inside.
Inside, yes.
So I'm wondering what that would be because it's inset like for a store display or
It,
something.
it was correct. So in terms of the interior, I would put a curtain bar on the inside. And one thing we were thinking about was actually closing off that sort of mezzanine level. We were thinking about putting in some sort of plexiglass interior in there as well. They could use it for storage. They could open it. They could put a TV in there if they wanted something along those lines.
Okay, because you were talking about possibly changing the outside
Yes,
facade. So where that doorway inset is, you would put
exactly.
an
Do you mind if I
overhang or
approach?
something? Sure.
Yeah, no, yeah, sure.
Gene, let's make sure that
Sure.
the stenographer can hear you and anyone.
So if you look at just the door itself, the black door at 745 Center Street, that's pushed in from the street.
Right.
And so it's exposed. There's basically a step up there, maybe 3 feet of step that I was thinking if somebody wanted a vestibule made, then maybe we could set up some sort of vestibule there.
So you would enclose it kind of and then walk
Exactly.
in
Just
like a
so
little
for
hallway. kind of thing.
packages, for safety, anything that they wanted along those lines. That's what I was thinking about.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Mr. Novotny, any final thoughts?
Nothing.
Okay. Gene, I'd like to go off the record and let's go outside and very quickly in executive session. Gene, I'd like to go back on the record, and I'd welcome a motion from a member of the zoning hearing board.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve 745 Center Street variance to waive the requirement of commercial use and the variance to eliminate the off-street parking requirement under the following conditions: that any exterior modifications are subject to the approval of the city and all guidelines.
May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Ms. Lee,
Yes,
Mr. Novatnik,
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Yes. Your appeal's been granted. Good luck with the project. If you want to be perfectly safe, you may want to wait till you have the written decision. I would encourage you to coordinate closely with Mr. Piper, or whoever's appropriate on the exterior modification especially.
Thank you so
Okay.
much for your time, all members. Really appreciate it.
Good luck with the project. The next hearing is that of 557 to 559 East Broad Street. And the appeal of David is, do you pronounce it Badillo or Badillo? Badillo? Okay, Mr. Badillo, can you tell us when the property was posted?
The property was posted approximately April 5th.
April 5th. Okay, thank you. Mr. Piper, may we have the facts of the case, please?
Certainly. This property is located at 557-559 East Broad Street. This is the appeal of David Badillo on behalf of Red Church Lehigh Valley, Inc., to convert the former commercial restaurant into an institutional place of worship, which requires a variance to waive the requirement of a commercial use on the front street level and where fronting on an arterial, and a variance to reduce the minimum off-street parking requirement, 50 spaces required, 10 dedicated, and 9 shared spaces existing. This record lot is irregular in shape, totaling 9,920 square feet, and is located in the CL Limited Commercial Zoning District.
Okay, thank you. I do know that a few people joined the chambers since we started. Will you be questioning or testifying in this matter? You will not. Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Badillo.
Members of the board, thank you for this opportunity. With me today is also the owner of the property, Pastor Gary Hartman, who will also be speaking today. Red Church Lehigh Valley is a humble congregation. Currently, we make up about 30 people. That includes men, women, and children, a very humble fellowship. We've been seeking a property recently as the pandemic has been transitioning, and we feel a little bit more comfortable about taking this step. We've been a church organized and recognized by the state and the federal government for 5 years. Humble beginnings. At one point, we did rent out Farmersville Elementary School with the Bethlehem School District pre-pandemic. And during the pandemic, we've been doing online services, as most churches have, just trying to survive. And we are excited about the opportunity when we learned about 559 East Broad Street as an opportunity, a potential location for us, a place of worship. We believe that the variance request to convert the current status of that location from a restaurant to a place of worship could be something that's done rather easily. To accommodate our group, we don't need a massive open space. Currently, the way it's set up, the primary main chapel would be providing us with 700 square feet, which can accommodate our size group, which we anticipate about 30 to 35 people, including children, in that space on a Sunday morning. Our Sunday services are expected and planned for 11 a.m. and will be done by 1 p.m. using the premises. We have also, we're looking for a multi-purpose area for children's ministry that can accommodate about 15 children in the elementary school level. And there's the adjacent side of that property with 746 square feet that can accommodate our ask. The changes or modifications that we would plan to make, there is a kitchen square footage of a kitchen area of 580 square feet that will be converted into a storage use by the owner, Gary Hartman. We would intend to close that off and no longer use it for kitchen appliances. All the appliances and everything related to that will be turned off and removed, and it would just be used for storage purposes. And the church will be using approximately 1,800 square feet of the space for actual church use. In terms of our plans of schedule, we're keeping it simple. We plan to use the place traditionally on Sundays in the morning, and monthly we might have a Friday night gathering for youth ministry, which will be roughly somewhere between 20 to 25 young people gathering for very intentional gatherings. Throughout the week, very minimal activity, just maybe 1, 2, 3 people moving in and out of the location for custodial duties, cleaning the chapel, small counseling sessions, individual counseling sessions, but no mass gathering, like say mass or like traditional gatherings pretty much happening outside of Sundays. We have a very strong relationship with the Center Lehigh Valley, which also shares space in that block. We are kind of seeing ourselves as an extension of that campus. We are building intentional relationships to create a coalition of faith-based institutions that will work together to serve the community of Bethlehem and the greater Lehigh Valley. We have worked together to serve the homeless. We have worked together to work in shelters and serve the community. And we are going to be very intentional in that close proximity that we share, that we will amplify that work and it will benefit the people. I also brought Pastor Gary here, Gary Hartman, to speak to the variance request for the parking. Based on our numbers, we feel that really 10 to 12 parking spaces is really what we would need access to in order to accommodate the full gathering on a Sunday. And based on our observance and conversations with Gary Hartman, we're confident that that can be accommodated. And I'll just pause and allow Pastor Gary to speak to
Well,
that.
if you would, Mr. Badillo, let me first see if we have any questions
Sure.
of your testimony. Members of the board.
Yeah, concerning the parking, it looks like you would have like 19 parking spaces available to you.
And I will point out, because I understand, is it Pastor Hartman? Okay.
Or you can just
You-
call me Gary. You can just call me Gary.
Oh, okay. Well, if Mr. Badillo, if Gary is the better person to answer the question, you can let us know that.
In terms of the parkings and just like the geographical and specifics, yes.
Yeah, I was asking, like you would have 19 parking spaces with 10 dedicated, 9 shared existing?
Right. My
Well,
wife.
wait, I'm sorry. I want to conclude questions for Mr. Badillo first, and then we'll hear testimony from
Oh, okay.
Pastor Hartman. And I'm sorry if you
That's
would
all right.
please, Ms. Lee.
I'm talking about the parking right now.
Yeah, so why don't we wait till Mr.
Okay.
Hartman, Pastor Hartman.
Cool.
Anything else for Mr. Badillo?
The exterior, would you be able to answer questions about the exterior? If you're going to leave it the same, or are you going to?
The exterior, the only plans that we have is to change the signage. Right now, it says Flama Tropical Restaurant.
Well,
Outside of that, we plan to make no changes to the exterior.
Okay, because it kind of looks like a house.
And well, in terms of that, that's not a problem for us. We're not concerned
You're
with that.
not, you don't care.
No,
okay.
yeah. Once again, we're very humble in our approach, and that's not something that we prioritize.
Okay, we can come back to you. Mr. Novotny.
My questions will be related to the parking also, so. I'll
Okay,
pass.
thank you. Mr. Badillo, will you or are you the pastor of the church?
Yes, I am.
Will you be residing?
Yes. No,
At-
no, residing, like living
there.
there?
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, I'm a resident of Easton, Pennsylvania. I live in Palmer Township.
So none of what you're proposing as a church will be residential use for someone to live there?
No.
And can you tell me again, your at least your best guess, how many days a week will it operate as a church?
It'll be operating consistently once per week with special events happening monthly on a Friday night.
Are those special events anything that would involve cooking or serving food or anything of that nature?
Serving, most of it is youth events, but if there's any food, it will be pre-made and brought to the location. Nothing will be cooked on premises.
Okay, thank you. Attorney Boyle, did you have anything for the record?
Can we reserve the questions until after?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mr. Piper, do you have anything specific? for
None
this?
at this time.
Okay, then I'm sorry. Thank you. And we can proceed with your next witness then.
Yes, my wife and I are the owners of the property, 557 to 559 East Broad Street. Back, the ministry that we founded bought the Milham car dealership at 529 East Broad Street. You're probably familiar with that. And we established El Shaddai Bethel Ministries, which is now called the Center Lehigh Valley. And the reason I bring that up is because we're very willing to share those parking spaces with the 557, 559. My wife and I also personally own the little house in between, which was converted and is now used for a mental health ministry. We want that whole block to be used to serve the community. And that's why we asked Flama Tropical to move out, even though we didn't have anybody else there at the time, because our desire is to see that block is used to help people that need help in whatever ways we can. And I believe that Red Church is a good fit for that because they're focused on doing ministry things, some things that our ministry in the former Milham car dealership building is not. I give that overview because when we first bought the Milham building, that was Christina's restaurant and bar, and I think maybe they had some troubles there, and it was Cosa Nostra, I think, before that, and then Flama, and we didn't have any problems with Flama. We just thought that we'd rather use that building for ministry. So that's why we're working very nicely with the Badillos and Red Church. And we would like to have them to come and have their ministry on the block. I don't think they would be imposing on any of the residential people in Elmwood Park. And across the street, you have the post office and another larger facility. So I think there'll be plenty of parking for their people either on the streets, on those two streets on the corner, or in the parking spaces that are part of this property, or even they could use some of the spaces that we have in the Milham car dealership, what used to be Milham car dealership. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about that. That it would be, I think it would be a favorable addition to the community to have them to be part of this. Flama left about 3 years ago, so we were not in a rush to just put a sign up and get somebody in there, because we did want to wait until the right ministry came along to occupy that space, and we believe that Red Church is that right ministry.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So any overflow parking that you would have, if you have an event or something, who knows? They would park at your other building
Yeah, they could.
or on the street?
They could use those spaces that are part of our parking lot
Uh-huh.
that are very close to 557, 559, and they could use those as overflow.
Okay, but they wouldn't park in the parking lot across Hawthorne Street?
No, you mean the triangular one? We have nothing to do with that, so we could not offer that to them.
Okay, no, I'm not talking about offering, it's just people do what
Well,
they
and
do.
I
and
guess
they'll end up
they
parking.
they might park in that triangular parking lot, but we would suggest that they don't.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, that's why I ask. Any overflow parking then would be at your other building
yes.
or on the street?
That's correct. On that trapezoid block that used to
Okay.
be Milham and then a residence and
Right.
Flama or Cosa Nostra, whatever.
I will also add the relationship that we have with the Center Lehigh Valley is at a healthy point where if we are ever coordinating an event where we anticipate overflow, we would probably work together and host that event at the larger chapel space in their facility, which
Right.
is something that we've talked about in the past. And so we wouldn't intentionally organize something that would put us in a position where we would have some overflow that would force us to even think about using that space across the street. So we're working and creating an operational strategy that works under the assumption that that space across the street is not accessible and will not be accessible.
Thank you.
Mr. Novotny.
So there is adequate on-street parking around Broad Street for any overflow parking that couldn't be accommodated by the parking lots you're talking about?
I think on Broad Street, you would have in front of the building, you would have like 3 or 4 spaces right there. And then you'd have 3, I believe, on Hawthorne that would be on that building's side of the street for Hawthorne. And then you would have the parking spaces that are part of that property. Yeah. So, I mean, and there's nobody else that really parks there because there's nothing else for them to go to if they park there.
Right, and is it permitted parking in the Hawthorne Street
Oh,
area?
I don't know if it's permitted. I don't believe it is. Not that I'm aware of.
Mhm,
I
okay.
don't, yeah. Mhm.
Next question is, did you seek another restaurant tenant after the previous restaurant?
No, once we asked Flama to move out, then we were not interested in getting another restaurant in there. We wanted to have someone there who did ministry, whatever, if it was a soup kitchen, if it was a church kind of a format, whatever it was, but we wanted it to be ministry related.
Did anyone approach you to reopen a restaurant?
I had a call, somebody call, and I don't know whether they were qualified or not. Hey, I see the place is vacant. I got your number. Are you interested? I'm there. No, we're not interested. Yes, we did have a few calls in that 3-year period.
Okay, very good. No
Mhm.
more questions.
Actually, I'm going to come back to Mr. Badillo. How large of a congregation did you say you had?
Right now, we're probably maxed out at 30.
At 30. And those
That
would be,
includes children.
yeah, and that would include families as
Yes,
well as
families,
yeah.
yeah.
So in all likelihood, you would be looking at how many vehicles that would even
Maximum
require?
of 10.
Maximum of 10. Okay. I have no other questions. Attorney Boyle.
One question. So, Mr. Hartman, you own the property. Is Red Church a tenant? Is there a lease? What's the legal relationship between the two?
No, my wife and I own the property personally, and we have engaged in conversation, and we have a kind of a verbal memorandum of understanding of what we'd like to do if you approve their being able to be at that location. Yes. So did that answer it? We don't have anything legally binding or anything like
So,
that yet.
if the variance is granted, you will do a lease at that point?
Yes, we may do what I call a memorandum of understanding as opposed to a lease. We could do a lease.
So, some legal document?
Yep.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah, they were part of he and his wife and their kids were part of our congregation for 3 years. Then they started planting this other church about the last 3 years, I think. And so we know who we're dealing with, and we're glad that they need to move out of their home, which is right now where those people are gathering.
Mr. Piper.
Just one question for Mr. Badillo. As accessory use to the principal, do you intend to also operate a daycare center?
No.
Do you intend to operate a meal center?
No.
Do you intend to operate a temporary shelter?
No.
Okay, that was my only question.
Thank you. I don't believe there are any, but are there questions from members of the audience? Seeing none at this point, I would also invite comments or testimony from members of the audience. Seeing none, Mr. Badillo, did you have any closing remarks that you wanted to?
I just wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity to hear our case and our testimony. And we look forward to a decision that gives us the opportunity to serve the community of Bethlehem.
Okay, thank you. Gene, I'd like to go off the record, please. Let's go outside again.
Okay. This chair.
whole process, yeah.
Gene, I'd like to go back on the record, please. And I'd welcome a motion from a member of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve 557, 559 East Broad Street and waive the variance for the commercial use and to reduce the minimum off-street parking requirement with the following condition, and that is to not have an accessory daycare.
I'll second.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Novatnik,
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Yes, your appeal's been granted. Good luck with the project. You may want to wait for the written decision before you proceed. But again, we wish you well in the good work that you're planning for the community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Both-
God
both
bless
of
you.
you.
For serving the community this way. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
And the next and final appeal for this evening is that of 502, 504 East Fifth Street and the appeal of Louis, is it pronounced Intile?
In tile, correct.
Intile?
Would I be able to approach to pass these out, please?
Absolutely, because then I have to get a few things on the record then as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Al, can you tell us when the property was posted?
April 4th.
April 4th, okay. Mr. Pfeiffer, may we have the facts of the case, please?
Certainly. This property is located at 502-504 East Fifth Street. This is the appeal of Louis Intile on behalf of Lower Carlton Street Realty LLC to construct two single-family semi-detached dwellings, also known as twin dwellings, which requires dimensional variances for minimum tract size, 6,000 square feet required, 4,000 square feet existing, to reduce the lot area per dwelling, 3,000 square feet required, 2,000 square feet proposed, or one dwelling permitted, two proposed, and to reduce the minimum lot width, 60 feet or 30 feet per unit required, 40 feet or 20 feet per unit proposed, and a variance to reduce the minimum off-street parking requirement, 6 spaces required, 4 proposed. This record lot measures 40 feet by 100 feet or 4,000 square feet, is located in the RT high-density residential and student housing overlay zoning districts.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Anthony Giovannini Jr. from the Law Office of Brockle and DeVito. I'm here filling in for one of my colleagues, Mr. Jim Preston. He was unable to make it this evening. Our office represents Mr. Louis Intile on behalf of Lower Carlton Street Realty LLC. May it please the board, permission to call Mr. Intile as my first witness. Mr. Intile, please state your full name, spelling your first and last name for the record, please.
Louis Intile, Louis. Last name is Intile.
And how are you employed?
Self-employed and principal with Lower Carlton Street Realty.
And what line of work do you do?
Real estate investment and development.
Could you describe some of your notable projects within the city of Bethlehem?
Within the last year, we completed the revitalization of the 300 block of Van Buren Street, taking a kind of a dump site for a construction company and replacing it with 7 updated townhomes for Lehigh University students. We also completed the 506, 508 redevelopment project, which was the first property taken under the Blight Initiative for the city. And we also have redeveloped properties, I would say almost 100 properties in the city of Bethlehem in the last decade.
Are you familiar with the property located at 502, 504 East 5th Street in the city?
Yes.
And is Lower Carlton Street Realty LLC the owner of Northampton County Tax Parcel ID P6S E1B-32-1-0204?
Yes.
And does that parcel number correspond with the previously mentioned address of 502, 504 East Fifth Street?
Correct.
And when did the LLC purchase that property?
In 2001.
And who did you, 2001,
Correct.
2021?
2021. I apologize.
And who did you purchase that property from?
The Bianco family, Joseph Bianco.
And what was that property previously used for?
Good question. It was a parking lot for Leon's Bar, which operated across the street at 432 East 5th Street. And formerly, before Leon's Bar, it was known in the neighborhood as Teresa's, which was a restaurant.
And this subject property, is that on a corner lot?
Correct.
Which roadway does Fifth Street intersect with there?
It's East.
And what is your proposed use at the subject property?
To construct a single-family semi-detached dwelling consistent with the other properties on the block and in the neighborhood.
Mr. Inta, at this time, I'm going to allow you to run through the exhibits so the board can get a better understanding of
Sure.
what we are proposing here.
Sure. If you don't mind, I'll start with figure 1. So figure 1 is a picture of the property I mentioned earlier, 506, 508 East 5th Street, and you can see the 502, 504 lot on the corner there.
Is this the pack
Correct.
of route? Thank
Yes.
you.
Do we mark?
We-
Yeah, I was
you
going to say,
wanna
we
mark
will
that
mark
as
this
exhibit?
applicant's exhibit A.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. So we were introduced to this corner effectively back in 2018 and 19. I was a member of the Blight Initiative, and at the time the city was focusing on blighted properties in the neighborhood, putting out RFPs for redevelopment. We purchased this property from the Redevelopment Authority at 506, 508, and demolished a an antiquated and collapsing single family home and built the 506, 508 structure that you see here. In doing so, we realized, actually, we can go on to the next page, that property, the parking lot next door was a dumping ground for furniture, abandoned vehicles, garbage, and just neighborhood parking in any manner possible. And it was not a good thing for that intersection. I actually am on a bunch of Southside organizations, Southside Arts District Advisory Committee, and the CACLV Steering Committee, and the CACLV Housing Committee. And through that participation, figure 3, you can see that in the city of Bethlehem, we have had great redevelopment of our east-west corridors, East 3rd Street, East 4th Street. And now the focus of development and revitalization are on our north-south streets and the linkages from the downtown to the university and the Hill. So you can see on the corner of Fillmore and 3rd Street, we have the 510 Flats building. And on the Fillmore and 4th Street, we have the Fowler Community Wellness Center and Hispanic Center, the JV with St. Luke's. And then now on the next corner, we were attracted to revitalizing that corner and have acquired most of the properties at that intersection and have been redeveloping them. The first component is in figure 4, which was the aforementioned 506, 508 dwelling. You can see the house that existed and what exists today, the yard filled with debris and garbage and leaves, the back porch collapsed, and now we have a nice residential dwelling. So that was the first component of revitalizing and renovating that intersection of East 5th Street and Fillmore. Figure 5 shows 430 and 432 East 5th Street. So subsequent to doing the redevelopment of that project, we purchased 430 East 5th Street, and that was in 2019, I believe, 2018, excuse me. And it took 3 years to close on the remaining parcels, which were the 432 East 5th Street, and then as part of that was the parking lot at 502 and 504 East 5th Street. It was an all or nothing deal. We had to purchase the liquor license. We had to purchase a property up the street, the parking lot, and this building all in one shot from the family. We couldn't really parcel it off. We've completed the renovation at 430 East 5th Street. We will be submitting permits shortly for the interior renovation and exterior renovation of 432 And then the last component would be the parking lot. Figure 6 shows some neighboring properties, all being single-family, semi-detached dwellings. Figure 7 is a view from the front steps of 432 and across the street from 502, 504. All homes are single-family attached or row homes or single-family semi-detached twin dwellings. And figure 8 is a view directly across the street on the 400 block, also twin dwellings or single-family semi-detached dwellings. Figure 9 shows the intersection of East 5th Street and Fillmore Street. This parcel is on the corner and highlighted in red on the corner of East 5th Street and Fillmore Street. Figure 10 shows the makeup of all the neighboring properties. There are 27 tax parcels that front on East 5th, the 500 block of East 5th Street. The green dots represent 14 single-family semi-detached twin dwellings, similar to what we are proposing for this 502, 504 lot. 11 are denser, single-family attached row homes, and there is one mid-block single-family detached dwelling in the neighborhood. If we were to be granted relief, we had proposed a project in 2020 to the board, and that project is underway currently. And I just wanted to include the design elements because we work very closely with planning and zoning to ensure that from the street, the development is perceived to fit in with the neighborhood. So that is why we have included the dormer in the front so that the properties appear like our neighboring properties as 2.5-story dwellings. And that design element fits in with the neighborhood. And then figure 12 will demonstrate the site plan and existing conditions. It is an approximately 100% covered parking lot at this present time. And we are proposing the site plan in figure 13 to propose a single-family semi-detached twin dwelling. When meeting with planning and zoning, in terms of design guidelines, it was suggested that we move, while 506 and 508 were recessed, it was suggested by the city planning and zoning to front justify the buildings again and bring them up to the front, to front on East 5th Street. And instead of parking in the front, put parking in the rear off of Fillmore Street. So that's what we are proposing today. We have a depressed curb all along Fillmore Street and a depressed curb in the front of East 5th Street. We are proposing raising that curb and adding street trees in the front of the property on East 5th. So in addition to providing 4 off-street spaces, we will, in seeking the variance, we are adding 2 on-street spaces on East 5th Street. Thank you.
Mr. Intile, just for the record, your proposed use is permitted in this zoning district,
Yes,
and you are not seeking use variance tonight, correct?
I am not.
That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Questions from members of the board? Ms. Lee?
Yes, I'm just looking at the photos and the existing houses at, what is it, 506 and 508?
Correct.
And then the house behind that. Lots of windows for people.
The
So
house,
At 506, 508, there's windows on it?
yes.
So when you put up the new building, how close is that going to be?
So if, in terms of the building behind, if we look to the figure 13, we are going to be, I want to say, about 40 feet from there. So there would be adequate light and air to the 511 Fillmore, 513 Fillmore
But
property behind.
What about the 506,
And the
508?
506, 508, if you see that side window, that's actually the bedroom that fronts, I believe, to East 5th Street. So there, that bedroom has 2 front windows.
Okay, I'm looking on the lower portion of the building.
The first window on the lower portion is an entry hallway, and in the rear is an open kitchen living area. And by the time you get to that rear window, that the building will stop because we're front justifying the
Like you're
building.
moving it forward.
Correct.
So they still, my point is, they'll still have some light going into the
Correct.
house. Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's all I have right now.
Mr. Novotny.
Do you anticipate that this, when completed, if we give the approval, will be student housing or family housing?
Student housing. It is in the overlay district. As a point of record, I am on the CACLV as a student housing developer. Surprisingly, I am a member of the CACLV Housing Committee. And the intent of the ordinance is to increase potentially density within the zone, thereby alleviating pressure from the expansion of the student neighborhood into the neighborhoods where families were looking to find properties. So theoretically, should we be, granted the relief to be constructing a residence for 10 students, hopefully that's drawing 10 students from farther in the neighborhood and farther in the community back into the zone, thus freeing up 2, maybe 3 properties in the neighborhood.
That was my next question. You anticipate 5 students per?
Correct.
No more questions.
Thank you. The representation on the packet, is this essentially what you're looking to build?
Yes.
Bear with me. As I looked in at figure 1, the building that's standing there, that's immediately next to it.
Correct.
It appears to me that there are garages underneath,
Correct.
but you are not proposing that on yours.
We are not. At the time, in order to meet the parking requirement, because the property was not located at the intersection where you could enter from the rear, it was suggested, not by this zoning officer, but by a previous one, to set the building back to therefore allow a garage space and 1 or 2 spaces in front of the structure. In meeting with the city currently, that is not as desirable as what we currently propose is moving the building back to the street and to the Fillmore side and putting parking in the rear.
Thank you. I have no other questions. Attorney Well, did you have anything you needed for the record?
What's the core hardship argument?
So in the purchase, it was very challenging. It took us 3 years to acquire this property. We met with the city and the university and decided that a college bar in a residential neighborhood is no longer a good idea. We were required to purchase the liquor license and then subsequently sell it off at a loss to be able to redevelop this project. It's over the 3 years we were required to carry the property and at considerable expense. And in doing so, unfortunately, construction costs have increased exponentially in that 3-year period. And if we do not have the viability of the rent from those 2 other properties, it will limit what I'm able to do at 432 and surrounding properties. We look at the redevelopment of this lot as the 3rd component of renovating the entire intersection because it was a package. So we renovated the 430 East 5th Street, 432 East 5th Street, and the 502, 504 as one intersection revitalization.
Other questions?
Mr. Pfeiffer.
I just have 2 points to make, and the first is in regards to Ms. Lee's question. So the proposed building will meet the minimum side yard setback of 4 feet. The adjacent building that they also owned and developed sits back 3 feet. So there'll be a total of 7 feet between those buildings where they do run next to one another, which would meet the essence of the zoning ordinance. The other is just to commend Mr. Entile and his team. As he mentioned in his testimony, they did come in. We had extensive conversations about everything on this building, from its location at the corner to its form, its style of architecture, its fenestration, and front porches. And I think that they've done an exemplary job in meeting the design criteria of the zoning ordinance.
Thank you. Yeah,
One more
Jessica, I'm sorry.
question. I'm just curious here. How many families that are non-students are in that area on 5th Street?
On the 400 block, there are none. And on the 500 block, I believe there are 2.
2 families and all the rest is student housing?
It's a single adult individual in one of the properties, and it's an adult couple In the other, no children.
Okay. And like I said, the rest is all student housing?
The rest
in
is all
that-
student
in this
housing, correct?
particular area?
Correct.
Okay.
The single family house is actually Francisco Rivera. He's technically the mayor of South Bethlehem. So he's out and about, and I've known him for about 20 years now. He does a good job keeping the students in line, and he is the last family or resident on that side of the street.
Okay.
Mr. Novotny, anything else?
Nothing.
Are there questions from any of the members of the audience? Did you have additional witnesses?
Not at this time, sir.
You do not. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to offer comment or testimony? If so, would you please come to the microphone and identify yourself? Seeing no one, would you like to make closing remarks?
Nothing else other than thank you for your time, and we continue to look forward to doing projects in the city.
Okay, and then for the submission of the exhibits, whatever. Okay, Gene, would you like to go off the record and outside?
It's crazy.
God bless her.
Yeah,
she's
like this.
I think she's
I know.
90.
A gang of assassins.
So it's a 2-unit.
Gene, I'd like to go back on the record, please. And I would welcome a motion from a member of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to grant the variances necessary to construct 2 single-family semi-detached built dwellings at 502 and 504 East Fifth Street.
And
Second.
May I have a second? May I ask for clarification, though, and based on a question I'd asked, that the representation or the schematic provided to us in terms of the proposed construction is essentially what it is you're looking to build?
Correct. If you actually look to figure 11, that is the design of the structure that we currently have under construction on Hillside Avenue. Should we continue to do these, it meets the design guidelines of the city, and it will be very, very similar in layout and aesthetic to that.
And Attorney Buell, is that an appropriate condition to
Yes.
attach to this? Then with the permission of the author of the motion, I'd like to attach that as a condition.
I agree.
Mr. Pfeiffer, can we call the roll, please?
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Vadeney,
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Yes. Good luck with the project.
Thank you.
Thank
Wish
you,
you
everyone.
well. Thank you very much. Having no other business before the zoning hearing board this evening, these hearings are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.